There are things in this world that should never be trusted, and Yuta had already learned that lesson the hard way. Every single time, he was always the one who ended up paying the price. And the thing he trusted the least was girls who acted kind toward him. Yuta Tano was a high school boy who no longer trusted girls. Again and again, he had been deceived and used by girls who only tried getting close to him because of his handsome older brother. After going through that so many times, he had completely given up on trusting them. Then one day, Izumi Huju greeted him with a cheerful good morning again and again because she couldn't hear his reply. Yuta started getting irritated and told her to stop already since he had been answering her the whole time. Izumi calmly explained that she simply couldn't hear him. Yuta then answered again, this time in a much sharper voice, loudly greeting her back. Izumi only responded with another calm good morning before walking away. Yuta stood there confused. For some reason, he felt strangely flustered by the exchange. He quickly told himself to pull himself together. Lately, Izumi had been approaching Yuta more and more often. Izumi Huju, the girl from the same class as him. Izumi was known around school for being cute, and many people believed she would be the perfect match for Yuta's brother, who was 3 years older than him. Because of that, Yuta had no doubt that Izumi was just another girl interested in his brother. Then Izumi suddenly turned toward Yuta and asked him what kind of bread he liked. Yuta froze in surprise and immediately asked why she was suddenly asking him that. Izumi only stared at him quietly, waiting for an answer. After a short pause, Yuta admitted that he liked melon bread. The girl standing behind Izumi then mentioned that if that was the case, Yuta should stop by the cafeteria later because they would definitely have melon bread there today. After the two girls walked away, Yuta could only wonder what Izumi's deal really was. Back in the classroom, Yuta couldn't stop thinking about how much Izumi kept throwing him off balance. Later, during gym class, Izumi was playing basketball while Yuta watched from nearby. Another boy suddenly called out to him and commented on how cute Izumi really was, asking Yuta if he thought the same thing too. The boy went on about how hard it was to tell what Izumi was thinking, but how that mysterious feeling was part of her charm. Not only was she cute, but she also had good grades and was even talented in sports. While watching the game, Yuta noticed Izumi asking for the ball even though she was standing too far away to make the shot. In his mind, there was no way she could score from there. And just as he expected, Izumi missed the shot. Even so, Yuta noticed that she still looked completely satisfied with herself afterward. The other boy continued saying that Izumi was cute and claimed she had only missed by a little. Yuta immediately questioned what exactly the boy had even been watching. The boy simply pointed out that Yuta had been staring at Izumi the whole time too. Yuta quickly denied it and insisted that he wasn't. At that moment, Izumi suddenly turned toward the boys and flashed them a cute smile. The boy instantly froze from embarrassment and quickly turned away shyly. Meanwhile, Yuta could only sit there wondering what that was even supposed to mean, and what exactly Izumi was trying to do. Yuta quietly thought to himself that Izumi Huju had really been driving him crazy lately. The problem was that he couldn't understand what she was thinking at all. But even after talking to him so much, Izumi had never once brought up anything about his older brother. That made Yuta start wondering, could it actually be possible that she liked him instead? For a moment, Yuta imagined Izumi being in love with him and finally getting noticed by her. But then he suddenly heard someone mention Rei-sama. Yuta turned his head and saw his older brother surrounded by attention again, this time standing together with another girl. Nearby students immediately started talking about how cute the girl beside Rei was, while others wondered if she was a first-year student. Just as Yuka expected, Izumi was one of the girls who liked her brother. Then several girls rushed toward Rei, saying they wouldn't let another girl get ahead of them. In the middle of the crowd, Yuta ended up getting shoved down. It had always been like this for as long as Yuta could remember. Every girl who ever acted interested in him had really only been chasing after his older brother. They would act friendly toward him and pretend they cared about him, while their eyes stayed fixed on the brother walking ahead of him. That was exactly why Yuta could never trust girls who treated him kindly. Then suddenly, Izumi asked if he was alright while offering him a handkerchief. Their eyes met for a moment as Izumi calmly told him that he could use it if he wanted. Yuta immediately asked why she wasn't chasing after his brother instead. Izumi glanced toward Rei, who was still surrounded by girls, before simply explaining that she had found Yuta instead. And that was all there was to it. Izumi held the handkerchief out toward him again and told him to just take it already. Yuta quietly thanked her, and Izumi casually replied that he was welcome. As she stood up, Izumi reminded him to make sure he returned the handkerchief because it happened to be her favorite one. Even after that, Yuta still convinced himself that Izumi was definitely after his brother. In his mind, there was no way a girl like her could actually like him. Because of that, he made up his mind that he would never allow himself to be deceived again. There were things in this world that he absolutely refused to trust, and one of them was the fact that Izumi Huju had been talking to him so much lately. Yuta remained certain that she was only trying to get closer to his older brother. One morning inside the locker room, Izumi suddenly approached Yuta again and greeted him with a cheerful good morning. Yuta answered her back the same way. Then Izumi unexpectedly asked him what his zodiac sign was. Yuta answered that he was a Virgo. Izumi repeated Virgo back to herself questioningly. Yuta confirmed it and asked what about it. Without warning, Izumi suddenly grabbed onto his tie. Yuta immediately asked what she was doing all of a sudden and told her to give his tie back. Morikawa suddenly called out to Izumi Huju and greeted her good morning before telling her to check something out. According to today's horoscope, Virgo's lucky color was blue. Morikawa then explained that dark green was apparently unlucky today, which was why she had decided not to wear that tie. Yuta could only stare in confusion, wondering what any of that was even supposed to mean. As Morikawa and Izumi walked away together, Yuta Tano once again thought to himself that he would probably never understand what was going on inside Izumi's head. Yuta quietly muttered that he hated to disappoint Izumi, but he didn't believe in horoscopes at all. More importantly, there was no way he was going to trust her. To Yuta, girls like Izumi always lied in the end. There was simply no point in trusting them. As the day went on, Yuta felt like nothing but bad luck had been following him around. One of his classmates even pointed out that he looked more exhausted than usual. While glancing over at Izumi sitting nearby, Yuta quietly started wondering if maybe she had actually been right the whole time. For a moment, he thought that Izumi might be easier to understand than he first believed. Then Yuta found himself wondering if Izumi's lucky color might be white or something similar. At that moment, Izumi stood up from her seat, and a cute accessory she was carrying suddenly fell to the floor without her noticing. Yuta quickly called out to her, telling her that she had dropped her lucky item, before rushing toward her. But as he hurried over, Yuta suddenly slipped and accidentally crashed into Izumi's back. Embarrassed, he immediately apologized. Outside the classroom, another crowd of girls could already be seen rushing toward Rei-sama again. Both Yuta and Izumi noticed the large crowd gathering nearby. Izumi casually pointed out that if Yuta had taken one more step, he probably would have gotten trampled again. She then told him that he was lucky she was there. After that, Izumi looked directly at Yuta and pointed toward her hair, telling him to look carefully because it matched his lucky color. Yuta instantly became flustered and caught off guard. Meanwhile, Rei-sama continued being surrounded and admired by girls who kept talking about how handsome he looked today. Near the classroom window, one girl quietly mentioned to her friend that Rei-sama's younger brother also attended the same school. Her friend asked who it was. The girl then pointed directly toward Yuta. The girls started saying that if they got close to Yuta, they might be able to get Rei-sama's contact information through him. And hearing that only reminded Yuta why he could never stand girls. To him, girls only ever approached him because of his brother. That was exactly why Yuta refused to trust them. Especially Izumi Huju, the girl who had been constantly bothering him lately. As Yuta Tano returned to the classroom, Izumi Huju immediately welcomed him back. Yuta quickly told her not to welcome him back and pointed out that she was sitting in his seat. Izumi realized that she actually was sitting there, so she shifted slightly to the side and casually told Yuta that he could just use the other half of the seat. Already irritated, Yuta replied that there was no way he could sit like that. While looking at Izumi, Yuta quietly thought to himself that Izumi Huju really seemed to have a lot of admirers, even inside the classroom. In his mind, the only reason she kept talking to him was because she wanted to get closer to his older brother. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something strange about her. Izumi suddenly leaned closer toward Yuta while staring directly at him before pointing out that he was writing something in his journal. Nearby, Morikawa casually commented that Yuta seemed pretty confident. Yuta turned toward her in confusion. Morikawa then asked if he had forgotten already and reminded him to get ready because there was going to be a math quiz. Izumi calmly confirmed what Morikawa had just said. Not long afterward, Yuta completely fell into despair. His test score ended up being only 5 points out of 50, and their teacher announced that anyone who scored 10 points or lower would have to take a make-up test the next day. Soon after, two classmates who had gotten good scores came over and started teasing Yuta about his result, telling him not to take it too hard. Another one joked that suddenly getting hit with a test he never knew about sounded rough. One of the classmates then casually suggested that maybe Yuta failed because he had been too busy talking to Izumi before the test. Yuta immediately denied it. After realizing he needed to study for the makeup exam, Yuta thought about going straight home while his classmates headed off toward the arcade. But while walking, he suddenly changed his mind and decided that home probably was not the best place to study. Instead, he headed straight to the library. Inside the library, Yuta continued studying while thinking that maybe changing his surroundings would help him focus better. Even so, he still couldn't understand the material at all. Growing frustrated, Yuta struggled through the problems until suddenly Izumi appeared beside him and pointed out that he had made a mistake. Caught completely off guard, Yuta accidentally shouted in surprise before immediately feeling embarrassed afterward. Izumi casually walked over and pointed out that he was seriously studying pretty hard. Yuta couldn't help wondering why Izumi was even at the library in the first place. Seeing her there honestly surprised him. He had always imagined that someone like Izumi would spend time at some stylish cafe after school instead. Izumi then sat down right beside him. For a brief moment, Yuta almost started getting the wrong idea after realizing that the most beautiful girl in school kept acting so close to him. But even then, he still convinced himself that there was no way Izumi could actually like him. While sitting beside her, Yuta noticed that Izumi was reading a light novel with an unbelievably long title. Izumi glanced toward him and questioned what he was staring at. Yuta immediately got embarrassed and quietly answered that it was nothing. Afterward, Yuta asked why she decided to sit beside him. Izumi simply replied that she thought Yuta looked like he needed some help. Izumi Huju pointed toward Yuta Tano's notebook and calmly pointed out that he still had not written anything down. Izumi then asked if the problems were from today's quiz. Yuta confirmed that they were. That immediately reminded Yuta about what Takemiya had once said about Izumi being smart. For the first time, Yuta seriously started wondering if Izumi really was as intelligent as people claimed. As he watched her look over his exam paper, Yuta noticed that Izumi seemed to be spacing out while reading it. Honestly, she didn't look like the type of person who even paid attention during class. Then Izumi casually held up Yuta's failed test and bluntly pointed out that he had failed. Yuta instantly started making frustrated noises again, though he tried holding himself back. In response, he quietly muttered about wanting to know what Izumi's own score looked like. Without hesitation, Izumi pulled out her own test paper and revealed a perfect score before casually pushing it right into Yuta's face. Already irritated, Yuta quietly muttered that she was unbelievably persistent when it came to bothering him. Izumi simply reminded him that he was the one who asked. Then, almost immediately, Izumi's expression softened into a smile as she offered to teach Yuta the parts he didn't understand. Izumi continued repeating that she would teach him until Yuta finally gave in and agreed. A few minutes later, Izumi suddenly asked if Yuta was only memorizing the answers instead of actually understanding them. Time slowly passed while the two studied together. Eventually, Yuta quietly whispered to himself in relief that he had finally finished. Only then did he realize how late it had already gotten. Yuta tried getting Izumi's attention, but the moment he looked toward her, he suddenly went quiet after noticing how completely absorbed she was in her book. Izumi then looked over and asked if he had finished already. Yuta replied that he wanted her to check his answers and told her that she could do it after she was done reading. Izumi casually answered that it was fine because she had actually finished the book a long time ago. While staring at her, Yuta quietly started wondering if Izumi had really been waiting there for him the entire time. And once again, the same thought crossed his mind. Could Izumi actually be interested in him? Izumi suddenly moved a little closer beside him before checking over his answers and telling him that everything was correct. The moment Yuta heard that, his heart immediately started pounding with excitement, causing him to make strange noises again. Izumi quickly shut him down before he could continue. Right after that, Izumi received a message from her mother saying that she had arrived home. Soon after, Izumi quietly left the library, leaving Yuta completely frozen in place. Not long later, the librarian noticed that Yuta was somehow still sitting there. The next day, Yuta could hardly believe it when he ended up getting a perfect score on the makeup test. First-year high school student Yuta Tona was out shopping. While looking through the vegetables, he became irritated after noticing how expensive everything had gotten compared to before. To him, it felt like only people who were pretty well off could casually buy things like that. Then he spotted a cabbage and reached for it. Yuta's eyes widened in surprise when he suddenly noticed Izumi standing in the same vegetable section right beside him. Their eyes met for a moment. The sight shocked him, and he immediately wondered why Izumi was there. Izumi asked if he was shopping too, and Yuta confirmed it. To Yuta, seeing Izumi in casual clothes felt strangely refreshing. She actually looked pretty cute. The thought caught him off guard, making him question what he was even thinking. He quickly reminded himself that he could not think that way because of his own principles. In his mind, Izumi was messing with his head again. Yuta then shifted his attention to Izumi's grocery basket. He asked if she was out buying supplies and wondered what was written on her shopping list. Izumi showed it to him, and as Yuta read through it, he was shocked to realize that the things she was buying were completely different from what was actually listed. Izumi explained that her parents told her she could use the extra money for snacks. Yuta thought she had her priorities completely wrong. He explained that she could get snacks afterward and told her to put the snacks back first, but Izumi immediately held onto the snacks tightly. Izumi stared at Yuta with a deadpan expression, though Yuta still could not figure out what she was thinking. A little later, Izumi walked over to the freezer section to grab some ice cream, and Yuta pointed out that there was no ice cream written on the list either. After some time passed, Izumi felt grateful toward Yuta since she managed to buy everything she needed while still getting snacks as well. Eventually, they parted ways and said their goodbyes. Yuta stayed behind in the grocery store, wondering how, out of all people, he somehow ended up helping Izumi with her shopping. Then he noticed that his auntie was also there in the store. She asked whether Izumi was his friend or maybe even his girlfriend. Hearing that immediately made Yuta blush. He quickly explained that Izumi was only his classmate. His auntie mentioned that she simply assumed the two of them were having fun together. To her, it almost looked like they were on a date. Still, she apologized for putting Yuta on the spot like that. Yuta realized that he had never actually seen Izumi laugh before. Without meaning to, he started wondering how Izumi would probably laugh around his brother instead. The memory of those girls talking to him only to get closer to his brother resurfaced in his mind once again. Yuta clenched his fist proudly and convinced himself that the shopping earlier did not look fun to him at all. At that moment, he firmly resolved that he would never allow himself to be deceived again. Sometime later, Yuta finally came out of the grocery store feeling relieved that he had managed to save some money that day. Outside, he noticed that Izumi was still standing there because it had started raining. He wondered if she had forgotten to bring an umbrella. Even though Yuta himself had an umbrella, he told himself that it was not really any of his business. Then he remembered the handkerchief Izumi had once handed to him. Then Yuta finally decided to extend his hand and share his umbrella with Izumi, thinking that she might catch a cold if she stayed out in the rain any longer. Somehow, the two of them ended up walking home together, even though Yuta originally thought he would only lend her the umbrella. As they walked side by side, Yuta started wondering what was going on with Izumi. To him, most girls would normally refuse to share an umbrella with some random guy. While walking together, their shoulders accidentally bumped into each other. Yuta immediately apologized. Izumi responded with a cute smile, saying it was fine since there was barely enough room under the umbrella for both of them anyway. Seeing that reaction made Yuta blush slightly. Izumi then added that the umbrella was originally made for one person, so there was not much they could really do about it. Yuta kept thinking about all of that, which only made him feel even more nervous. Even so, he still believed that Izumi was probably only acting this way to get on his good side. While they were walking along the sidewalk, a truck suddenly approached nearby, sending water splashing toward them. Yuta quickly warned Izumi to watch out and immediately used his own body to shield her from the incoming splash. Izumi asked if Yuta was alright, and Yuta asked her the same thing in return. Izumi pointed out that he would not have gotten soaked if he had simply used the umbrella to block the water instead. Hearing that made Yuta realize that she actually had a point. Still, he told her that it was fine as long as she did not get wet. Right after that, the water that had collected on the umbrella suddenly poured down onto both of them instead, leaving them soaked anyway. The two stared at each other for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, Izumi burst out laughing and wondered what Yuta was even doing. Yuta apologized once again, but Izumi told him it was alright. She also thanked him for protecting her from the splash earlier. At that moment, Yuta could not help but think that Izumi Huju was a strange girl, someone who laughed during the strangest moments. Not long after, Yuta noticed that the sky was already beginning to clear up. The two of them decided to hurry home. To Yuta, Izumi was still someone he needed to stay cautious around. One of the school's small events eventually arrived, the seat change. The person Yuta had been the most cautious of, Izumi Huju, ended up sitting right next to him. Izumi quickly noticed that Yuta seemed unsettled. She scooted a little closer toward him and leaned in slightly, hoping that the two of them would get along. Yuta awkwardly replied that it was fine. Out of everyone in the class, Yuta could not understand why Izumi had to end up sitting beside him. To him, it almost felt like some kind of trap that had been quietly waiting for the seating change to happen. Yuta then decided that he would turn this misfortune into an opportunity for himself. This would be his chance to learn more about Izumi and finally see through what he believed was her facade. A little later, Yuta noticed Izumi leaning behind him, which immediately shocked him. He asked why she was looking that way, and Izumi explained that she was looking at the mountain outside. Yuta became confused, but Izumi calmly explained that looking at nature from far away was supposed to be good for a person. Quietly, Yuta admitted to himself that he really did not mind whatever Izumi was saying. Even so, he still could not understand what she was truly thinking. Yuta convinced himself that, of course, Izumi was probably after his brother too. While sitting beside her, he began noticing how all of Izumi's school supplies looked incredibly cute. Compared to hers, Yuta's own things felt completely plain and ordinary. Somehow, everything around Izumi even seemed sparkly to him. Yuta then noticed a strange little item among Izumi's things that looked soft and bouncy. Izumi explained that it was called a laze dog. Yuta quietly wondered if something like that was actually popular. Izumi simply commented that it was cute. Izumi started playing around with the toy before mentioning that it kind of looked like Yuta. Hearing that immediately irritated him, causing him to stand up and deny it right away. Nearby classmates noticed the interaction and commented that the two of them looked like they were having fun together. The others around them quickly agreed. Yuta sat back down in frustration, realizing that he had basically gone in circles trying to uncover something about Izumi. Usually, whenever someone sat next to him, they only bothered him for information about his brother. Yuta glanced over at Izumi again, still unable to understand what she was actually thinking. A little later, Yuta suddenly froze in shock after noticing Izumi wearing glasses. He asked if her eyesight was bad, and Izumi confirmed that it normally was not much of a problem. However, because she was sitting farther in the back now, she needed to wear them. Izumi then asked whether Yuta could still see clearly from the back seats. Yuta casually replied that it was easy enough for him since he had perfect vision. He explained that when he was younger he often played around forests and outdoor places, saying that he was actually more of an outdoors type of person. Yuta started questioning Izumi's poor eyesight and thinking back to her previous seat, but before he could continue, the teacher suddenly called on him because the next question was directed at him. Caught completely off guard, Yuta immediately realized that he had not been paying attention during class at all. As he slowly stood up, Izumi quietly whispered a single word to him: persistence. Yuta paused for a moment, wondering whether Izumi was actually giving him the correct answer. The teacher asked if Yuta had even heard the question properly. At that moment, Yuta wondered if he could really trust the answer Izumi had given him. He clenched his fist slightly and hesitated before finally answering with the word persistence. The teacher confirmed that it was the correct answer. Hearing that made Yuta realize that Izumi had not tricked him after all. Yuta looked toward Izumi and thanked her. In response, Izumi gave him a small wink, which immediately made Yuta blush. He quickly turned his head away, quietly wondering why Izumi looked like she was enjoying all of this so much. For the moment, Yuta decided that he would trust Izumi just this once, especially since she had helped him out. Yuta then asked Izumi why she did not simply ask someone else to switch seats with her if her eyesight was really that bad. Izumi only smiled and admitted that she actually liked sitting there. That answer only left Yuta even more confused, making him realize once again that he still could not read Izumi at all. A few hours later, the new seating arrangement was written on the board. Izumi ended up as number 23. Morikawa asked whether she would really be alright sitting that far in the back, but Izumi calmly answered that she was perfectly fine with it. Izumi then looked toward the back of the classroom where Yuta was sitting. Another classmate tried insisting on switching seats with Yuta, but Yuta immediately dismissed the request and refused to change places. For some reason, Izumi looked especially happy with the seating arrangement. Later on, Izumi started tying her hair by herself. After fixing it one way, she asked Yuta what he thought about it. Then she tried another hairstyle and asked again. Then another one after that. After being asked over and over, Yuta became slightly annoyed and questioned why Izumi always needed his feedback for these things. Still, to Yuta, Izumi looked perfectly fine no matter which style she used. As time passed, Yuta began noticing little things about Izumi after sitting beside her for so long. One thing he especially noticed was how she always seemed oddly happy every single time she opened her pencil case. That made Yuta curious about what could possibly be inside it. For a moment, he even suspected there might be a photo of his brother hidden in there or something similar. But when he finally got a look inside, Yuta realized that the entire inside of Izumi's pencil case was decorated with Lay's dog designs. Izumi genuinely looked excited just from seeing the inside of her own pencil case. Nearby, Morikawa casually walked past the crowd of students gathered around Rei. One of the students noticed her and pointed out how Morikawa never seemed interested in chasing after Rei-sama like everyone else. The student asked Morikawa whether she was not planning to go see Rei-sama too. Morikawa casually answered that she was fine without doing that. When asked why she was not interested, Morikawa cheerfully explained that she loved herself more than Rei-sama. The other students found Morikawa strangely dazzling, yet at the same time, there was something oddly calming about her attitude. Morikawa then asked Izumi whether she had said something weird. Izumi immediately replied that she had not and admitted that she actually loved that part of Morikawa. Some time later, once everyone was already on the bus, Morikawa excitedly suggested that they all play cards together. Voices quickly filled the bus as students commented on the surprisingly nice card set Morikawa had brought. Others agreed that it sounded fun and wanted to join in too. Morikawa then asked Yuta if he would be playing as well. Before he could properly respond, Yuta somehow got dragged into the group anyway, causing him to protest loudly about not being included without permission first. That day was meant to be an outdoor learning trip, where the entire class would spend time in nature while also strengthening their class bonds. Yuta eventually ended up in his current group because Takemiya had called him over earlier. Surprisingly, Yuta found himself feeling somewhat comfortable there. On top of that, Izumi was also part of the same group. Even so, Yuta figured that was still better than being grouped together with some of the other girls in class. Takemiya suddenly called out to Yuta and asked whether he had been paying attention at all. He explained that everyone was currently deciding the curry-making team roles using cards. The winner would get to choose between cooking curry or gathering firewood. There would only be 2 people assigned to firewood duty and 3 assigned to cooking duty. Takemiya also mentioned that the only thing he had heard from an upperclassman was that firewood duty was apparently brutal. Hearing that immediately shocked and irritated Yuta. At that moment, Yuta became determined to stay on the better side of the team selection no matter what. To him, losing was simply not an option. After getting off the bus, the students were called together to gather around. Yuta then asked Izumi why she ended up on firewood duty too. Izumi explained that because Yuta had finished dead last while she came in second to last, she got dragged into the same punishment. She pointed out that if Yuta had not ruined it for her, she would not have been stuck hauling firewood as well. The two of them continued carrying firewood across the steep slope. It was no joke at all, and Yuta quickly realized how rough the work actually was. He glanced around for Izumi, wondering if she was still managing somehow. Izumi was wobbling while carrying the bundle of firewood in her arms. Not long after, Izumi dropped the firewood and claimed that she was done already. Yuta quietly thought that she was acting as if the work had already ended even though they were not even halfway finished yet. But then Yuta started noticing something about Izumi. At that moment, Hasegawa walked over and called out to Yuta and the others, asking if they were doing all right. Yuta simply looked at her. Before leaving, Hasegawa reminded them not to hesitate to speak up if anything happened. Around them, other students were clearly admiring her. Yuta thought it was no surprise that Hasegawa was considered one of the two biggest stars in their class. Suddenly, Izumi leaned close right in front of Yuta's face, catching him completely off guard. Yuta reacted by telling her not to suddenly appear out of nowhere like that. While looking at Izumi more closely, Yuta realized that she was genuinely terrible when it came to anything physical. Yuta then stretched out his hand and offered to carry the firewood for her instead. But Izumi grabbed his hand directly, making Yuta clarify that it was not what he meant. He added that if they did not hurry up, all the curry would be gone before they made it back. Yuta carried the firewood himself and started walking ahead. Izumi blushed lightly before thanking him. She moved closer beside him and commented that he was actually a nice guy. Yuta brushed it off with a doubtful response. A little while later, Yuta and Izumi stared strangely at the food prepared by the cooking team. They questioned what exactly they were looking at. The cooking team awkwardly explained that it was supposed to be curry, at least in their opinion. Yuta wondered if the cooking team had dumped every possible secret ingredient into the pot. Both he and Izumi tasted the curry, but only moments later Yuta shouted after realizing how terrible it tasted. Yuta immediately took charge of the situation. He instructed Mirai to quickly gather ingredients and water, then assigned Morikawa to handle the spices. Meanwhile, Izumi and the other students watched Yuta work on fixing the meal. Izumi questioned whether Yuta was actually skilled at cooking. Another girl answered that she had heard Yuta cooked often. Sometimes he even prepared his own bento lunches, and they were apparently really good. Hearing that, Izumi commented that homemade bento sounded nice. Soon, Izumi and several other students joined in to help with the cooking. After some time passed, the food was finally finished. Once the students tasted it, they were delighted by how good it turned out. Some said Yuta's rescue mission had completely saved the meal, while others praised how delicious it was. Mirai even commented that the secret ingredient ended up working surprisingly well too. Yuta explained that he had adjusted the amount himself a little, and he was relieved that everything ended up tasting fine in the end. Then Yuta noticed that Izumi had not said anything yet. He started wondering whether she actually liked it or not. Feeling oddly nervous, he asked Izumi how it tasted. Izumi looked at him and told him that it was delicious. Yuta then pointed out that she had rice stuck on her face, causing Izumi to quickly wipe it away. Yuta quietly wondered why seeing that made him feel strangely happy. He questioned whether it was because Izumi had complimented his cooking, or maybe because her opinion had mattered to him more than he realized. Soon after, their teacher made an announcement that the next activity was about to begin. It was a recreation event hosted by Mr. Kobayashi. The event being introduced was a treasure hunt game held in the mountains. Their teacher explained the rules of the game to everyone. Using the map as their guide, each group had to move through the mountain together, solve the puzzles placed along the way, and possibly discover real treasure by the end of it. Mirai commented that they would find out what the first question was once they headed further up ahead. Behind them, Takemiya and Morikawa happily chanted about 1,000,000 yen, while Yuta quietly thought there was no way the prize would actually be that much. Soon, Morikawa spotted the location of the first question and urged everyone to head there. Watching them, Yuta thought his teammates really had way too much energy. Nearby, Izumi asked Yuta if he was coming along too. Yuta quietly felt that something about Izumi seemed a little strange that day. Not long after, Morikawa called out to both Izumi and Yuta, pointing out that the question was over there already. Yuta answered that they were coming. When the group arrived, they found the question waiting for them. It asked what Miss Kobayashi usually did on her days off when there was no school. The choices given were aerobics, bowling, and wrestling. Yuta immediately got frustrated, wondering how anyone was supposed to know the answer to something like that. Takamiya told him to think more carefully, reminding him that their imaginary million yen depended on it. Morikawa suggested there might be some kind of hint hidden nearby. Meanwhile, Yuta insisted there was no realistic way for them to figure it out. Before long, Izumi calmly figured out the answer and chose bowling. She remembered Miss Kobayashi casually mentioning during class the other day that she liked going bowling on her free days. Morikawa was amazed by Izumi and commented that simply managing to stay awake during Miss Kobayashi's class was already impressive by itself. Izumi then leaned against Yuta and urged him to praise her too. Yuta admitted that she really was impressive. Takamiya pointed out that without Izumi, they probably would have failed on the very first question already. Morikawa praised her again, while Mirai thanked her for saving the group. Hearing all of it, Izumi looked genuinely pleased by the attention. Seeing that, Yuta quietly guessed that Izumi seemed fine after all. The group continued moving forward while solving more questions along the way. Morikawa happily pointed out that they had already cleared quite a few of them. Takamiya commented that it felt like they were almost at the finish already. Watching his teammates, Yuta thought again about how full of energy they all were. Then Yuta suddenly realized that Izumi was nowhere around. Morikawa explained that Izumi had gone to get some water earlier. A moment later, Morikawa also realized that Izumi should have returned by now already. Around that same time, an announcement echoed through the area, asking how everyone was doing and informing the students that there were only 10 minutes left before the event ended. Yuta started thinking that time was running out. Even if Izumi had gone to get water, she should not have wandered that far away. He wondered if she had gotten lost somewhere. Then again, considering how absent-minded Izumi could be, Yuta realized it was not impossible at all. Worried, Yuta clenched his hand before casually telling the others that he was feeling thirsty too and was going to grab some water himself. He urged the group to continue ahead without him. Takamiya reminded him to be careful before Yuta left the group behind. As he searched around, Yuta thought about how spacey Izumi could be and how impossible it always was to tell what she was thinking. He decided it was better to be safe than sorry. Several minutes later, Yuta finally found Izumi and called out to her. He questioned what she was doing all the way out there when she was only supposed to get water. Izumi explained that she had found a sign saying, "Treasure down here," so she ended up following it. Yuta told Izumi that they needed to catch up with the other 3 members of their group. Deep down, he felt relieved that she had not actually gotten lost. As they were about to leave, Yuta noticed something wrong with Izumi's foot and asked if she was hurt. Izumi wondered how he figured it out. Yuta replied that she had been acting strange the entire day. He questioned why she had not told anyone earlier, reminding her that it was dangerous to keep pushing herself like that. Yuta told her that she did not need to force herself so much for the outdoor activities. In response, Izumi admitted that she had really been looking forward to coming there together with everyone. Especially with him. Hearing that, Yuta suddenly fell silent. Yuta had always thought Izumi was the kind of person whose feelings were impossible to understand, yet at that moment, her expression was unexpectedly easy to read. After a pause, Yuta told Izumi that what she said sounded childish. Izumi immediately became annoyed by his reaction. Not long after, Yuta ended up carrying Izumi on his back since she could no longer walk properly. Izumi apologized to him for the trouble, but Yuta brushed it off, saying it was an emergency anyway. Izumi then asked if she was heavy. Yuta replied that she was actually way too light and suggested that she should eat more. Izumi pointed out that she had already eaten 2 servings of curry earlier that day. She added that the curry had been really good, and that doing the treasure hunt together with everyone had been genuinely fun for her. Yuta teased Izumi by pointing out that she ended up getting blisters from the brand new shoes she had been so excited to wear. He added that once he started paying attention, she was actually pretty easy to understand. At that moment, Izumi realized something about the fact that Yuta had come looking for her. She quietly thanked him for coming to find her. To Yuta, Izumi Huju had always been a girl he could never fully trust. But now, he started thinking that maybe she was actually far simpler than he originally believed. Yuta then remembered the moment when Izumi once told him that it was because she had found him. Thinking back on those words, Yuta realized that day was the first time he genuinely wanted to believe in Izumi, even if it was only a little. After the group reunited, Takamiya happily announced that after everything they went through, they had finally reached the final treasure safely. The so-called treasure turned out to be 10 copies of a classical problems workbook. Mirai immediately questioned what happened to their supposed million-yen prize. Yuta, already annoyed, asked if they were really still talking about that. Takamiya then jokingly suggested that Yuta should take all the workbooks home himself. Still irritated, Yuta told them to just give them to Izumi instead, only for Izumi to casually mention that she already owned one. Nearby, Hasegawa quietly turned her head and looked toward Yuta. One morning after the outdoor trip, a female student greeted Hasegawa as they arrived at school, and Hasegawa politely returned the greeting. Hasegawa then asked the girl if she was already doing committee work first thing in the morning again. The girl confirmed it and mentioned that she had already finished her duties. While walking through the hallway, Hasegawa noticed a male student struggling to carry something heavy and immediately offered to help him with it. The boy asked if she was really sure about helping. Nearby, several students quietly admired how cute Hasegawa looked as always. To them, she seemed like the perfect beauty, completely flawless on top of everything else. A moment later, Hasegawa sharply called out to a group of girls nearby, telling them that was enough because they were bothering Rei. After that, Hasegawa approached Rei directly and apologized on behalf of the others. Rei simply replied that it was fine and thanked her calmly. Hasegawa then walked away while the students behind her whispered that she did not seem interested in Rei at all, which only made them admire her even more. However, the moment Hasegawa entered the girls' restroom, her composure completely changed. She quickly opened her notebook and carefully wrote down details about Rei-sama's scent that day. According to her notes, it was rose again, just like before, maybe even better than last time. In her mind, she thought Rei-sama smelled unbelievably good. Hinagi Hasegawa was a first-year student, and above all else, she was an extreme fanatic of Rei-sama. Hasegawa quietly muttered to herself about how unexpected it was for Rei-sama to suddenly appear in their class. Internally, she was overwhelmed with excitement over the fact that she had actually gotten to talk to him directly. She even remembered that Rei had smiled at her, and just recalling it made her incredibly happy. As she gradually calmed herself down, Hasegawa admitted that simply admiring Rei-sama from afar was no longer enough for her anymore. She had already gathered every piece of information she could about his life at school. Now, what she truly wanted was to learn more about the real Rei-sama outside of that. More specifically, she wanted to know about his private life. And to do that, she knew she needed to get closer to Yuta first. Later on, Hasegawa greeted Yuta with a cheerful good morning. Yuta casually returned the greeting without much reaction. Outwardly, Hasegawa continued acting friendly toward him, but internally, her true intention was to gather information from Yuta about his brother. Hasegawa then asked Yuta whether he had already finished his homework. Yuta replied that he only had a little left to complete. Hearing that, Hasegawa offered to show him her own homework once he finished, but Yuta immediately refused. Even after that, Hasegawa continued lingering around him. She casually asked whether it felt hot that day and if she should close the curtains nearby. Yuta simply replied that the temperature felt fine to him. Hasegawa quietly fell silent after hearing that. While keeping her expression controlled, she lightly squeezed the curtain in irritation, careful not to make it obvious. Sometime later, Hasegawa went to the restroom feeling annoyed, internally wondering what exactly Yuta's problem was. To her, his attitude just felt plain rude. Hasegawa quietly thought that most boys would normally be thrilled just to talk with a cute girl like her. From everything she had observed so far, Yuta should have been an especially easy target to deal with. At the same time, Hasegawa considered Izumi a possible rival for Rei-sama's heart. Lately, Izumi had also been getting unusually close to Yuta. Because of that, Hasegawa decided to secretly listen in on their conversations and try to dig up useful information. Soon, Izumi asked Yuta whether he had brought a bento with him that day. Yuta answered that he had only packed leftovers from the previous night's dinner. The moment Hasegawa heard that, she immediately focused harder, convinced this was finally the important moment she had been waiting for. In her mind, she expected Izumi's next questions to be about what kind of meals they usually ate at home, what Rei-sama personally liked eating, or what dishes the brothers preferred. Hasegawa felt certain that this was the perfect chance to gather valuable information. So she waited carefully for Izumi to continue asking those kinds of questions. Instead, Izumi simply responded by saying that it sounded nice. Hearing that, Hasegawa became irritated internally while still maintaining her calm expression on the outside. In disbelief, Hasegawa wondered why Izumi did not follow up with anything related to Rei-sama at all. Rather than asking about Rei, Izumi instead asked Yuta what kinds of food he personally made for himself. Hearing that made Hasegawa question what Izumi was even planning to do with such useless information. She started doubting whether Izumi was even a Rei-sama fan in the first place. Izumi then continued asking Yuta simple questions about the side dishes he liked and the kinds of food he preferred eating. Watching the conversation, Hasegawa realized that learning more about Yuta himself was completely useless for her goals. She quietly stared at Izumi, trying to understand what exactly was going on in her head. Not long after, Hasegawa returned to the restroom once again, feeling completely defeated. In the end, she had learned absolutely nothing about Rei-sama at all. Letting out a deep sigh, she wondered how things somehow ended with her learning more about Yuta and Izumi instead. All she really wanted was to spend time with Rei-sama, and she drifted into daydreams about him again. Even so, Hasegawa refused to give up. She remained convinced that Yuta and Izumi had to be hiding some kind of valuable information about Rei-sama. Deep down, she resolved that next time, she would definitely uncover something important. Meanwhile, Yuta eventually returned home. Rei welcomed him back, though he looked messy and smelled bad at the moment. Yuta pointed out that if anyone from school saw Rei looking like that, they would probably die from shock. After all, the Rei-sama everyone knew at school was always gloomy, composed, and perfectly neat. Lately, things around Yuta had become even more chaotic than usual. The heat felt unbearable to him, and on top of all the tasks they had been given, they were assigned weeding duty as well. Behind him, Hasegawa offered to help carry the trash, but Yuta refused and insisted that he was fine on his own. Hasegawa reacted brightly and treated it as proof that they were friends already. Yuta could only feel confused, wondering since when that had even become the case. Still, Hasegawa stubbornly took the trash from him anyway. She then walked off while happily humming to herself, convinced that they truly were friends after all. At that moment, Takemiya suddenly appeared beside Yuta. Yuta could only wonder what Hasegawa was even trying to accomplish. Back inside the classroom, Hasegawa rested while muttering about how exhausted she was from all the cleaning. At the same time, she was frustrated that Yuta still had not revealed a single thing about Rei-sama. She thought that building friendship really was a long process after all. If she wanted to get closer to Rei-sama, then she first needed to establish a strong friendship. Using her previous operation as a reference, she had now moved on to carrying out Operation Friendship. On days when Hasegawa felt tired like this, she would usually comfort herself by smelling it. But then her heart suddenly raced when she realized it was missing. Panic quickly took over as she searched around for it, since she always kept it close to her. A few moments later, Hasegawa became completely gloomy. In her mind, she imagined Rei-sama becoming disappointed in her if she had really lost it, even questioning the sincerity of her feelings for him. Meanwhile, while walking through the corridor, Takemiya commented that Yuta had mellowed out quite a bit lately. Yuta looked confused by the remark. Takemiya then brought up how Yuta had helped Izumi earlier by giving her a piggyback ride. Yuta immediately became irritated, insisting that Takemiya had it wrong because he simply had no other choice since Izumi could not walk. He also questioned why Takemiya was bringing the topic up again in the first place. Takemiya concluded that Yuta's phobia of women must already be cured. Yuta replied that something like that would not heal so easily. Yuta admitted that he still did not trust girls at all. While the two of them continued walking, they noticed Hasegawa nearby looking unusually gloomy. Takemiya asked if something had happened, and Hasegawa explained that she could not find something she had dropped. Mirai asked her what kind of item it was, and she answered that it was a bookmark. The moment he heard that, Yuta immediately tried to walk away from them. However, only a few moments later, Takemiya and Mirai grabbed Yuta and informed Hasegawa that the three of them would help search for it. Yuta clearly did not want to get dragged into looking for the missing item. Takemiya then decided that they should split up into two groups. Hasegawa ended up paired together with Yuta, and she happily thanked him for helping her search. Yuta, meanwhile, remained completely nonchalant about it. Yuta told her that they should hurry up and find it already since he wanted to get home as soon as possible. He then questioned whether she was even serious about searching up on the rooftop. Hasegawa found his attitude extremely rude. Hasegawa eventually went over to the Rei-sama special observation deck, yet she still could not find the bookmark anywhere. Her mood sank even further as she wondered what she was supposed to do now, especially since the bookmark was something very important to her. Yuta called out to Hasegawa to get her attention. He asked her what the bookmark looked like, and Hasegawa explained that it had a pressed sakura petal on it. She also revealed that Rei-sama had given it to her. Yuta stared at her blankly for a moment. At that point, he finally understood why Hasegawa had been trying so hard to get closer to him lately. Hasegawa immediately denied it, insisting that it was not the reason at all. Yuta told her that it did not really matter to him. He mentioned that he was already used to things like that. Before turning to leave, he casually remarked that it was rare for his brother to give anyone a gift, and he wondered how Hasegawa had even managed to receive it in the first place. Hasegawa then explained that Rei had once picked a sakura petal off her head after it landed there, and she had later turned that same petal into her bookmark. Yuta reacted with disbelief and thought she was far too obsessed. Hasegawa immediately became irritated and snapped back at him. She explained that Rei-sama had been the only person who treated her kindly back then. As she spoke, Hasegawa's eyes became teary, and she quietly admitted how much she loved Rei-sama. Yuta's expression softened with sympathy after seeing her like that. Hasegawa quickly wiped away her tears and apologized for dragging him into the situation, then told him that she would continue searching on her own instead. As Yuta walked away, he told himself that he did not owe her anything. Even so, the image of Hasegawa with tears in her eyes while admitting her feelings for Rei lingered in his mind. Yuta found himself hesitating. Meanwhile, Takemiya asked Hasegawa whether Yuta had already left. Hasegawa replied that it was fine even if he had. Takemiya mentioned that the only other place Hasegawa had gone to earlier that day was the weed-pulling area. However, after checking the spot, Takemiya concluded that the bookmark did not seem to be there either. Hasegawa agreed and apologized to both Mirai and Takemiya for troubling them. She insisted that she would manage somehow on her own. After all, Hasegawa had only made the bookmark herself on impulse in the first place. Then, nearby, the sound of something clattering suddenly caught their attention. When they looked over, they found Yuta digging through the trash. Hasegawa asked why he was going that far just to search for it, insisting that he really did not have to. Yuta simply replied that he thought the bookmark might have ended up mixed in there somewhere. At that moment, Hasegawa suddenly felt guilty about how she had been using him. Meanwhile, Yuta explained that regardless of everything else, the bookmark was still clearly something important to her. Takemiya then commented on the situation and pointed out how Yuta had been used by girls chasing after Reisama for a very long time, which was exactly why he no longer trusted women. Hasegawa quietly felt even more guilty after hearing that, realizing that she had been doing the exact same thing to Yuta all along. Takemiya added that whenever someone was in trouble, Yuta simply could not ignore them and would always end up helping. Takemiya then labeled Yuta as a walking oxymoron and remarked that it was no surprise people kept taking advantage of him because of it. Takemiya pointed out that Yuta was actually a really kind person. Then, after a few more moments of searching, Yuta finally found something and concluded that it had to be the bookmark they were looking for. Yuta handed the bookmark over to Hasegawa and apologized for the way he had acted toward her earlier. Hasegawa immediately broke into tears and thanked him sincerely. In response, Yuta simply let out a tired sigh. Some time later, Takemiya told Yuta to grab his bag since they would all be waiting for him at the school gate. As Yuta looked at Hasegawa still carefully keeping the bookmark with her at all times, he could not help thinking that it was some truly extreme Brokon behavior. Hasegawa then called out to Yuta and admitted that she really had been trying to learn more about Reisama by prying information out of him while constantly beating around the bush. She also confessed that Yuta had rubbed her the wrong way from the start. To her, his mouth, his eyes, and practically his entire attitude had been irritating. Yuta reacted with annoyance, feeling that she had simply moved on to openly insulting him at that point. Hasegawa then explained that she would stop doing things like that from now on, and she sincerely apologized. After that, she laughed lightly and admitted that Yuta was actually kind of a good person after all. Then, in a cheerful mood, Hasegawa declared that she finally understood something important. To her, real love meant gathering information about Reisama directly from Rei himself. That was how she intended to prove her feelings properly. After saying that, Hasegawa suggested that she and Yuta should become real friends this time. Yuta immediately rejected the idea and bluntly refused, insisting that he still did not trust her at all. Hasegawa questioned why he had to ruin what had been such a wholesome moment. She complained about him being a stingy little jerk and wondered if he had always been this unhinged. Even after saying that, Hasegawa simply laughed it off. She then told Yuta that he should show that side of himself more often since it might actually make him more popular with girls. She clarified that he would never reach Reisama's level, but it would still be an improvement. Yuta became annoyed again and questioned why she kept insulting him every few seconds. Yuta then muttered that it did not matter anyway since girls always ended up using him in the end, just like Hasegawa herself had done. Hasegawa immediately told him to shut up and insisted that she would not do that anymore. Afterward, both Hasegawa and Yuta looked outside and noticed Muriai and Takemiya together with Izumi and Morikawa. Hasegawa then wondered if Yuta considered Izumi the same as the other girls. Yuta refused to answer the question directly. Yuta quietly muttered to himself that Izumi was a complete mystery. Hasegawa immediately noticed the reaction on his face. The moment she connected the dots, Hasegawa realized that Yuta liked Izumi. A smile spread across her face as she started cheering him on and encouraged him to go after her. She even began calling him her little brother-in-law. Yuta immediately questioned what Hasegawa even meant by the in-law part. The sports festival was already just around the corner, and that day was meant for practice. During the track race practice, Yuta stood at the starting position while Takemiya acknowledged just how fast he really was. Muriai also commented that it was exactly what everyone expected from Yuta since the race had turned into a complete landslide victory for him. Nearby, one of the students turned her attention toward Izumi and remarked that even while simply resting, Izumi still managed to look cool. Yuta eventually walked over to Izumi and questioned whether that was seriously the best place she could find to rest. He pointed out that the area was still unbearably hot. Izumi calmly agreed with him. Yuta then pointed toward another nearby spot that looked much better. However, Izumi explained that flowers had already spread all over that area. Yuta looked confused by the answer. Izumi clarified that it would be a waste to step on the flowers carelessly. She then insisted that her current spot was perfectly fine anyway and added that she simply could not be bothered moving anymore. Yuta quietly found that side of her surprisingly unexpected. He honestly never thought Izumi cared about things like that. Not long after, Izumi acknowledged that Yuta was actually pretty fast. Yuta casually admitted that he liked running in general. At that moment, Hasegawa called out to Yuta and asked if he had a minute. She informed him that there would be a relay race between teams during the festival. Hasegawa explained that it was going to be a mixed-grade relay event, and she believed Izumi would be a perfect fit for it. However, Yuta's attention was immediately drawn toward the huge chunky case hanging around Hasegawa's neck, and he questioned what exactly it was. Hasegawa proudly explained that she had learned her lesson from before, so she had turned it into a necklace instead. Hasegawa also praised Yuta's speed and mentioned that everyone in class had already agreed that he should participate in the relay. Yuta quietly thought about the relay race for a moment. In the end, he realized that he did not really have a reason to refuse, so he reluctantly accepted that he would join. Then, both Yuta and Hasegawa overheard nearby students talking excitedly about how Rei would also be participating in the relay. The students mentioned that they were planning to cheer for him no matter what, even if he belonged to the opposing blue team. To them, the team difference did not matter at all since they still intended to support Rei wholeheartedly. Hasegawa instantly became hysterical again after hearing that. She quickly turned toward Yuta and excitedly pointed out that if he joined the race too, then it would become a showdown between brothers. Yuta immediately brushed the idea aside and plainly stated that he had no interest in something like that. After saying so, he simply walked away. Later, while walking alone through the campus, Yuta's mood became gloomy. He thought to himself that he had done it again and wondered why he always ended up acting that way. For the longest time, the only rival Yuta had ever truly faced was his older brother. Yuta recalled a moment from the past when Rei had acknowledged how fast he was and admitted that the race between them had been close. Back then, Yuta had confidently declared that next time he would definitely win. But compared to Rei, who seemed capable of doing everything perfectly, Yuta saw himself as nothing more than plain and average, with no remarkable talents whatsoever. Yuta quietly wondered when exactly he had started giving up on becoming number one. It had started back when their parents would comfort him after every loss, telling him that he had done his best even against his older brother, and that it was fine because he could always try harder next time. That had been the moment Yuta simply accepted defeat and decided he was done trying. In his mind, there was no way he could ever beat his older brother anyway. Deep down, Yuta recognized that this tendency to give up was probably his worst trait. Even so, Yuta still believed there was at least one thing he could surpass Rei in, and that was handling everyday survival skills. At least, that was what he convinced himself of. Not long after, Yuta unexpectedly crossed paths with Rei in one of the school corridors. Rei casually asked if Yuta was heading home already and suggested that they walk home together for old time's sake. At that moment, Yuta questioned whether what he feared was never being the best. But after thinking about it more carefully, he realized that was not actually the case. What he was truly afraid of was constantly being compared to his older brother. Because of that realization, Yuta refused Rei's invitation to walk home together. He quickly claimed that he had suddenly remembered something he needed to do and told Rei to head home first without him. Rei could only stand there in confusion after Yuta left. A few moments later, Yuta started running at full speed, but he suddenly lost his footing. He tripped, rolled across the ground, and eventually crashed straight into a fence. While lying there on the ground, Yuta wondered what exactly he was even doing anymore. To him, it felt like he had been running away from everything around him. Then Izumi suddenly appeared in his view and checked whether he was alright. Yuta replied that he was mostly okay. Yuta immediately questioned why Izumi was even there, but more than that, he became painfully aware that she had witnessed him falling so badly. The embarrassment quickly overwhelmed him. Izumi, however, casually pointed out that the place where he landed actually felt pretty nice. Not long after, Izumi laid down there as well and mentioned that she had tripped in the same spot the other day too. According to her, it had felt so comfortable that she ended up liking the place afterward. Yuta quietly realized that Izumi had somehow done the exact same thing as him, and the embarrassment only made him roll around even more. Izumi eventually stood back up and mentioned how nice the sunlight felt in that area. Then she gestured for Yuta to move closer. Izumi explained that the best part was the slight breeze coming from a nearby fan. Yuta felt it himself and admitted that she was right. Izumi calmly remarked that it really was a pleasant spot. As Izumi peeked through the nearby doorway, she watched the students practicing for the sports festival and thought the sight looked nice. Then she noticed one particular event and pointed out that it was a bread-eating race. Yuta reacted in disbelief, wondering if she was seriously focused on the bread-eating part of it. Meanwhile, Izumi looked genuinely delighted as she imagined how the event worked, thinking participants would get to eat a lot of bread. Yuta immediately shut down that idea and explained that it was not how the race actually worked at all. Yuta then told Izumi to stay away from the bread-eating race entirely. Izumi explained that she had lost at rock-paper-scissors, so she ended up being assigned to the beanbag toss instead. Afterward, Izumi asked Yuta which events he would be participating in. Yuta answered that he would be doing the 100-meter dash along with the pushball event. Izumi then brought up the relay race and mentioned that everyone had been saying Yuta should participate in that too. Yuta replied that he was not actually that fast anyway, and besides, his older brother would also be there, so he had no intention of joining. The moment he said that, Yuta quietly questioned himself. He wondered why he was even telling Izumi something like that in the first place. Izumi simply asked why. Yuta tried to explain himself, but Izumi continued questioning why Rei being there automatically made it impossible for him to participate. Izumi admitted that she did not really understand complicated things very well, but to her, Yuta was still simply Yuta. Yuta looked over at Izumi and quietly admitted that maybe she was right. He explained that if he participated in the relay, people would naturally compare him to his brother again. At the same time, Yuta could not help thinking that Izumi really was unusual in her own way. She always spoke in a completely straightforward manner. Izumi then shifted her attention toward a nearby flower sitting in the shade. She noticed that the flower had been moved. According to Izumi, someone would have eventually stepped on it if it had stayed there any longer. She then observed how bright the flower actually looked now that it was under the sunlight. Izumi commented that once it was finally given a chance to stand in the sun, its true colors naturally started to show. She quietly wondered whether it might grow more freely there from now on. After that, Izumi turned back toward Yuta and reassured him that he would be fine too. She explained that while he was running earlier, he had looked like he was sparkling. With a bright expression on her face, Izumi told him that he was everyone's best chance for the relay. Those words deeply affected Yuta. Yuta quietly wondered how Izumi could sound so confident so naturally. He questioned why she never simply gave up and said something was impossible. He could not understand how she managed to think that way so easily. Yet with only a few simple words from Izumi, Yuta suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. His chest started pounding uncontrollably, and the feeling itself confused him. Yuta was certain that Izumi probably had not put any deeper meaning behind her words at all. To her, it was likely just a casual statement without any special intention. Even so, Yuta still wanted to believe what Izumi had said to him. More than anything, he felt genuinely happy that she had said those words at all. And because of that, Yuta found himself wanting to live up to the expectations Izumi had placed on him. At the same time, Yuta could not fully understand what exactly he was even feeling anymore. Then, the other day, Yuta brought up what had happened previously and thanked Izumi for it. He also returned the handkerchief she had lent him before. Yuta had carefully wrapped the handkerchief before returning it, which made Izumi question why he had gone that far. Yuta explained that it was nothing special. Since Izumi had mentioned that it was her favorite handkerchief, he simply did not want it getting dirty. To Izumi, it almost looked completely brand new now, and she quietly thought that she might keep it wrapped up like that for a while instead. Inside the classroom, Morikawa called for everyone's attention and told them to look over at the front. Morikawa introduced the cheer squad outfits while she and Izumi wore them for display, only borrowing the uniforms for the occasion. The entire class reacted in amazement. Someone loudly declared that they would give it their all at the sports festival today, and everyone answered together in agreement. Izumi then called Yuta's attention and showed him the outfit she was wearing, asking for his thoughts on it. Yuta casually responded with little interest, acting like it was nothing special. Izumi gave a smug look, while Yuta stared at her and admitted that he really did not know what to say. At that moment, Takemiya suddenly joined their conversation and reacted in disbelief at Yuta saying something like that right in front of the beautiful Izumi. Muriai then told Yuta that he should just let Izumi cheer for him during the relay race since that would make everything perfect. Suddenly, Izumi started making some strange gesture, which immediately irritated Yuta enough for him to tell her to stop because it looked weird. The day of the sports festival finally arrived. Because of what Izumi had said before, Yuta ended up deciding to join the relay race. Ever since then, though, simply seeing Izumi had been enough to make his heart pound even now. Just looking at Izumi was already making Yuta's heartbeat race. An announcement soon echoed through the area announcing the first event, the ball toss. Yuta had some free time since his own event would not happen until much later. Nearby, Yuta overheard someone mentioning that the pink team seemed to be falling behind. He paused and wondered if Izumi was participating in that event. Soon enough, he spotted Izumi stacking up the balls and dumping them all at once. Yuta could only stare in confusion, wondering what exactly she was doing since that clearly was not how the game worked. Quietly, Yuta thought to himself that he truly did not understand Izumi at all. Then suddenly Yuta bumped into someone. The man immediately apologized. He was a cool-looking guy with an intense glare. The man admitted that he had been spacing out and accepted the blame himself. Then, without much effort, the man grabbed Yuta by the waist, lifted him aside, and set him down before casually walking away as if nothing had happened. Yuta was left completely stunned, wondering who that parent even was. The only thing he could think about was how huge the man was. A familiar voice then called out to Yuta. It was his mother and father. Yuta could hardly believe that they actually came. His mother cheerfully told him that of course they would come and questioned why they would not want to support both of their precious sons. She then mentioned that they originally wanted to go see Rei too, but the crowd around him was too overwhelming for them to get close. Besides, it was much easier to find Yuta since he did not really have a crowd around him. Yuta immediately questioned whether that was supposed to be some kind of backhanded insult. Before the moment could settle, another voice called out to him once again. It was Izumi excitedly telling him that she managed to get 2 balls in. Yuta responded by telling her that she did a great job. Yuta's father quietly leaned closer and whispered to him, asking who the girl was, while his mother whispered that Izumi was adorable. Yuta quietly answered that Izumi was simply his classmate. Yuta's mother warmly told Izumi that it was such a pleasure meeting her and thanked her for taking care of their son Yuta all this time. Yuta's parents then introduced themselves to Izumi, and Izumi politely greeted them in return while introducing herself as well. Yuta's father began talking about Yuta, mentioning that Yuta rarely talked to girls, so seeing this surprised him quite a bit. Yuta's mother added that Yuta usually only spent time with boys. She then asked Izumi if it did not bother her that their son could sometimes be a little blunt. Izumi immediately reassured them that it did not bother her at all. She explained that Yuta had lent her his umbrella before and helped her when she needed it. Izumi added that she already understood how kind Yuta truly was underneath it all. Yuta's parents paused after hearing that. They exchanged glances before quietly smiling at each other. Yuta's mother commented that Izumi was such a sweet girl, while Yuta's father told Izumi that she was welcome to visit their home anytime if she had the chance. Then Yuta's father placed a hand on Yuta's shoulder and told Izumi that they would be really happy if she continued staying close friends with their son. Izumi happily agreed. Yuta immediately questioned what exactly had just happened, but his parents only smiled at him before saying that they would be cheering for him and telling him to do his best. Afterward, Izumi told Yuta that his parents were really nice people. She also told him that she would be watching him too, and hearing that alone was enough to make Yuta's heart start pounding again. Meanwhile, another girl was talking with Ray and asked him if he would be anchoring the relay race today. Ray confirmed it without hesitation. The girl then brought up Yuta as well, causing Ray to point out that she seemed to know quite a lot already. The girl explained that Ray was extremely popular, so naturally people talked about things like that. She then commented that it was pretty bold for Yuta to challenge Ray head-on despite knowing that Ray had never been defeated before. Ray recalled how just the other day Yuta had been incredibly fired up, which caused the girl to ask if that made him happy. Ray admitted that of course it did. He explained that it had been a long time since Yuta last showed that much passion toward a competition. Because of that, Ray felt that he also had to give it his very best. The girl quietly wondered why that sudden change happened. Ray fell silent after hearing that. A moment later, he stood up to get some water and mentioned that he would be back soon. As he walked away, Ray quietly thought about how not too long ago Yuta had been trying to avoid competing against him entirely. Now, though, something had clearly changed. For the first time in a while, Ray realized that if Yuta truly gave everything he had, there was actually a possibility that Ray could lose. Ray could not stop wondering what exactly had changed his brother. Now, only 3 regular events remained for the second half of the sports festival. The heat was scorching, but everyone was being encouraged to push through until the very end. Yuta's turn was finally approaching. Because Izumi had kept pushing him forward, Yuta ended up volunteering to become the anchor for the relay race. But now that the moment was actually here, with everyone watching, Yuta felt absolutely terrified. He questioned himself over why he had agreed to do this in the first place. He could not even imagine how he was supposed to run properly while feeling like this. Meanwhile, Yuta's parents met Izumi again and happily greeted her, mentioning that it was nice seeing her once more. They also asked if she was feeling too hot under the weather. Izumi admitted that she had forgotten to bring her hand fan. Immediately, Yuta's parents became worried for her and quickly started helping cool her down with water and a cooling towel pressed gently against her face. Then, an unfamiliar boy approached and offered Izumi a hand fan, telling her that she could use it if she wanted. The fan had Yuta's name on one side and Rei's name on the other so she could support both of them during the race. Izumi gratefully accepted it before quietly staring at the fan in her hands. Soon, the announcement for the final event of the day echoed across the field. It was finally time for the mixed grade relay race, and naturally, all attention was focused on the blue team's anchor, Rei-sama. Yuta quietly thought to himself once again about how popular his brother really was. The runners soon took their marks, and the race began. Takamiya commented on a mistake that happened right at the start of the race. Mirai pointed out that if they could somehow get the baton to Yuta in time, they still had a chance to turn things around. Nearby, Morikawa admired the hand fan Izumi was holding and called it amazing. Izumi agreed and mentioned that someone had given it to her earlier. At the moment, the blue team was in first place, followed by green, then red, then yellow. Pink team had started late and was stuck in last place. However, if Pink somehow managed to take first place, they would win the entire event overall. Even so, the blue team clearly had no intention of making that easy. Nearby, Rei suddenly called out to Yuta and asked if he was nervous. Yuta immediately denied it. Rei laughed lightly and acknowledged that response, acting as though Yuta naturally would not be nervous about something like this. Meanwhile, Pink team was still in last place, though the distance between them and the others was slowly shrinking. Yuta then turned the question back toward his brother and asked if Ray himself was nervous. Ray admitted that he actually was. Unlike Yuta, Ray explained that he had always been nervous. Ever since they were children, Ray had always believed that one day he would eventually lose to Yuta. Yuta quietly remarked that it would not hurt if Ray lost once in a while. Ray let out a small laugh before confidently saying that it was not going to happen. He admitted that he still wanted to remain the kind of big brother Yuta could continue being proud of. Hearing those words directly from his older brother left Yuta completely silent. At that moment, the announcer declared that the baton was now in Ray-sama's hands. However, the other teams were still close behind, making it clear that the race would end in an extremely close finish. As Yuta watched, he quietly reflected on how Ray had always been everything to him at once. His rival, his role model, and his pride. That was exactly why being compared to Ray frightened him so much. Every time they competed against each other, the difference between them became painfully obvious. And each time it happened, Yuta could not help feeling as though he was being told that he simply was not good enough. But Yuta was still Yuta, just like Izumi had once told him. As he looked toward Izumi, Yuta quietly wondered why that thought was reaching him right now. Somehow, the fear he had been carrying no longer felt as overwhelming anymore. The announcer reacted in shock as the baton finally reached the pink team's anchor. At the same time, they quickly realized just how fast Yuta really was. Yuta was not simply running fast anymore. He looked like he was flying across the track, completely blowing past the competition. In an instant, pink team surged all the way into second place. The people watching around the field immediately started reacting to Yuta's unbelievable speed. Some of them quickly recognized him as Ray's younger brother. The announcer loudly declared that it had now come down to the blue team and the pink team for the final showdown, questioning which side would take the victory. Meanwhile, Yuta's friends watched the race with complete focus. Then, the race finally came to an end. As people began walking away afterward, voices could be heard praising Ray-sama for being incredible. Others also acknowledged how fast Yuta had been, though many still insisted that Ray-sama remained the greatest. Yuta stood there trying to catch his breath. In his mind, he understood that he still ended up finishing in second place. Yet somehow, even after losing, things felt different this time. Then Izumi called out to him and told him that he did a good job. Yuta's friends were still excited as they gathered around him, cheering him on and telling him that his speed had been insane. Nearby, Takemiya called for everyone to head over for a group photo. As Yuta quietly walked behind the others, he called out to Izumi and apologized for failing to live up to her expectations. In response, Izumi grabbed the towel resting on Yuta's head and began roughly rubbing it against him over and over. Yuta immediately tried to make her stop. Still, Izumi continued telling him that he had been amazing out there. At that moment, Yuta slowly started to realize something. Normally, losing to his brother only left him feeling hurt. But now, there was someone watching him closely, and somehow, that alone changed the feeling completely. A moment later, Izumi mentioned that she would head over to the others first. Then suddenly, a hand landed on Yuta's shoulder. It was Ray. Ray admitted that it had been the most fun race he had experienced in ages. Yuta immediately complained about how hot it was, while also pointing out that Ray was standing way too close to him and telling him to back off. Ray casually responded that it was fine just for today. Yuta then questioned why Ray seemed so unusually fired up in the first place. At that moment, Ray quietly came to a realization. He finally understood why Yuta had been pushing himself so hard lately. Now that he had seen everything clearly, Ray realized that it was all because of Izumi. One day after the sports festival, Yuta was caught off guard when several girls suddenly greeted him like he had become famous overnight. They kept talking about how amazing he was during the sports festival, saying he looked incredibly cool for almost beating Ray. Beside him, Takemiya leaned against him and teased him about suddenly becoming popular, joking that his popularity arc had finally arrived. But Yuta still could not understand what was happening. Then he suddenly paused after realizing something familiar. The girls approaching him were offering to exchange contacts, giving him baked goods, and inviting him to eat lunch together, but every single conversation eventually led back to asking about his brother as well. Yuta immediately understood. It was the same obvious ulterior motive as always. That was exactly how girls were. For a moment, he had thought they might have calmed down after starting high school, but instead they had simply been waiting for the perfect chance to use him to get closer to Ray. Then suddenly, the crowd noticed Ray-sama approaching. The girls instantly left Yuta behind as if they had already forgotten everything they had just been saying to him. Behind him, Takemiya commented that he genuinely felt bad for Yuta. Irritated, Yuta questioned what he meant by saying he, seriously, felt bad for him. In Yuta's mind, those girls were obviously only after his brother and were merely trying to use him as a stepping stone. He found the whole thing pathetic. They suddenly acted overly friendly whenever it suited them. In the end, girls were all the same to him. While he was lost in thought, Izumi approached and greeted him good morning. Yuta paused for a moment, quietly seeing Izumi as the person currently on his mind. Lately, he had started trusting her more, but now he wondered if she was just the same as the others too. Yuta slowly stepped backward while Izumi looked at him and greeted him good morning once again. Since he had not responded the first time, she simply repeated it. But Yuta was still trapped in the belief that all girls were the same, all of them always chasing after his brother. After a short pause, Yuta finally greeted her back. Izumi smiled warmly before walking past him. Left standing there alone, Yuta became frustrated with himself, wondering what exactly he was even doing. Because of that, Yuta started thinking that he had been far too careless lately. He had allowed himself to get carried away simply because Izumi had been nice to him. He wondered if everything had been part of her plan to use him from the beginning, and whether he had fallen right into it. Maybe Izumi truly was different, but even so, he felt that he needed to stay more guarded. A little later, Izumi approached Yuta again, but Yuta deliberately looked away and apologized, saying that he had something he needed to do before quickly leaving. Izumi was left standing there alone, confused by his sudden behavior. In the cafeteria, Yuta sat there looking gloomy, now feeling ridiculously guilty about everything. Then Izumi quietly placed a candy on his desk. Yuta immediately told her that he did not want it. Izumi casually mentioned that it was soda flavor, but Yuta questioned what that was supposed to mean. Izumi explained that Yuta always seemed happy whenever something was soda flavored. She simply thought he would like it. Just as Yuta was about to take the candy, he suddenly stopped himself. A darker voice in his mind immediately questioned whether it was really okay to accept something from her. What if this was simply another way of trying to butter him up? At the same time, another calmer voice reminded him that this was Izumi they were talking about. She was the kind of person who handed out snacks without putting much thought into it. The doubtful voice pushed back again, warning him that he never seemed to learn. He kept trusting girls and always ended up getting hurt because of it. But the other voice argued that he should already understand the kind of person Izumi was from the way she had always acted around him. Trying to brush it off, Yuta muttered that it was not like he even liked it that much anyway. Izumi reacted with mild surprise before casually admitting that maybe she actually did not know what flavor he truly liked after all. In the end, Yuta could not resist anymore. He grabbed the candy and lightly squeezed it in his hand before admitting that Izumi had been right. Izumi looked confused, wondering what exactly he meant. Yuta admitted that he really did like soda flavor before quietly thanking her for it. Being around Izumi always managed to throw him off balance. The next day, a girl approached Rei and confessed that she had liked him for a very long time. Rei thanked her before gently apologizing, saying that he could not return her feelings. The girl quickly brushed it aside, saying that she had already expected that answer and that it was fine since she only wanted to tell him how she felt. Before leaving, she asked if the rumor was true that Rei had never had a girlfriend before. Rei confirmed that it was true. When she asked why, Rei simply answered that it was because he loved everyone. After hearing that, the girl hurried away while thanking him for his time and saying that she would continue cheering for him. Rei thanked her once again before they parted ways. But once Rei returned home, his entire mood completely changed. He looked exhausted, messy, and deeply gloomy. Quietly to himself, he muttered that he could never let anyone see him like this. The thought of dating someone felt impossible to him. In his own eyes, he was far too pathetic and nothing more than a worthless loser. He imagined how girls would react if they ever saw the real him. In his mind, he could already hear them questioning whether this was truly what Rei-sama was like behind closed doors. He imagined them accusing him of lying to everyone, calling him awful, shabby, and the worst kind of person. The thought alone sent Rei into a complete spiral as he rolled around on the floor in despair, convinced that girls would hate him if they knew the truth. Meanwhile, Yuta continued cleaning the house while telling Rei that he was only getting in the way. Yuta complained that he still did not understand what was supposedly so great about Rei and told him to at least help clean up instead of making things worse. Still rolling around on the floor while crying dramatically, Rei apologized to Yuta and claimed that the only way he could help clean was by becoming the mop himself. Yuta pointed out that Rei was only making an even bigger mess and told him to stop already and go rest somewhere instead. After that, Rei dragged himself over to the sofa and collapsed onto it. Watching him, Yuta commented that the difference between Rei's behavior at home and the way he acted outside was way too extreme. Rei admitted that whenever he was around other people, he constantly felt pressured to act perfect. By the time he returned home, he no longer had any energy left. Quietly, Yuta thought to himself that Rei really was like some kind of deformed creature. A moment later, Rei shifted the topic toward Yuta. Rei mentioned seeing him the other day getting close to a girl. Yuta immediately reacted awkwardly, insisting that it was not like they were especially close or anything. Rei quickly caught onto the reaction and casually figured out that the girl's name was Izumi Huju. Yuta then told Rei that maybe he should simply try acting more naturally around people. But Rei immediately rejected the idea, convinced that people would only lose interest in him if he did that. Besides, Ray believed that everyone had sides of themselves they never wanted others to see. Yuta quietly wondered if that was really true. Ray simply confirmed that it was. After that day, Yuta started noticing that the weather at school was getting hotter. He quietly thought that soon enough, those huge insects were going to start appearing everywhere again. Right after thinking that, a bug suddenly landed on his head. Yuta, who had somehow grown worse with insects as he got older, instantly panicked and called it gross while freezing up in fear. At that moment, Izumi appeared beside him and calmly told him to stay still so she could remove it from his head. Without hesitation, she let the bug crawl onto her finger. Yuta trembled the entire time until the insect eventually flew away on its own. Izumi casually mentioned that it was gone now. Relieved, Yuta thanked her before asking how she could touch those things so casually like it was nothing. Izumi explained that she was not good with every kind of bug either. Caterpillars were absolutely impossible for her, but since this one had a hard shell, she was fine with it. Then Izumi suddenly realized that Yuta was actually scared of bugs. She found it unexpectedly cute, causing Yuta to immediately blush from embarrassment. Quietly, Yuta started wondering why it felt like Izumi suddenly had some kind of weakness she could hold over him. To him, being scared of bugs felt embarrassing and pathetic. At that moment, Yuta finally understood what Ray had meant before about everyone having sides of themselves that they never wanted others to see. Yuta started imagining what would happen if Izumi used this weakness against him. He felt like he would end up obeying whatever she said. In a low voice, he awkwardly hoped that maybe she could just forget about this entire thing. But Izumi immediately refused. She said there was no way she would forget something new that she had just learned about Yuta. In fact, she admitted that it actually made her pretty happy. Hearing that only made Yuta more nervous, and he cautiously wondered what exactly she planned to do with that information. Sometime later, Yuta quietly cursed to himself. Izumi always seemed so calm and composed no matter what happened. But thinking about it more carefully, Yuta realized that while everyone had sides they did not want others to see, he actually knew almost nothing about Izumi herself. He began wondering if Izumi also had sides of herself that she never wanted people to know about. Just then, Takemiya called out to Yuta and told him it was time to head home, asking if he wanted to grab some food on the way. Then Takemiya noticed that Izumi was leaving by herself. Izumi explained that Urara had already gone home earlier. Takemiya casually invited her to walk together with them, but Izumi politely declined the offer and thanked them anyway, explaining that she had somewhere she needed to go. Takemiya guessed that she was probably heading to a bookstore again, but Izumi denied it and casually revealed that she was actually going to a maid cafe instead. The moment those words came out, Takemiya, Muriai, and Yuta were all left completely shocked.